Hello and welcome to another night shift. My name is Yazil, and today we want to equip the stuff to our UMA character. So not only we want to fill up the slots we did already, we want to see the stuff on our UMA. So we work on that today, and also we want to work on if we get rid of the item that our base stuff, the skin color is coming back as an overlay. So that's the goal we want to achieve today. And for that, we need in our stats, in our player stats, these numbers. So we need the body list that we use the element for. We need to know which color we choose at the UMA builder, and so we have to store that in our database. And fortunately, we have a database already. So let's go into. Let me pick up that. We have a database table, and in that table we store already different stuff. We store the male player, the gender, the player race, the UMA data itself, and we also store the intel, wisdom, destiny, and stuff like that. And we just expand that with hair color, body, and body color. If you like, you can expand that with the upper color and lower color from the equipped stuff also, or beard color, or the beard style, or whatever you want. Of course, you can store here, and so we know which stuff we choose. To expand that, you just go here and go on right click and alter table, and just go down here, click there, give a name, say it's int, set it to default expression 0, and then apply, and your table will be expanded with that. And after we did that, your database should be ready to handle the extra 4 integer variables we chose here. Next is we have to go in our player plugin, and in the player plugin we go and go into the install section, and in the install section we say create table, and we say we have a hair of integer and hair color of integer and body of integer and body color of integer. So we expand that also if we create or install the plugin new, that we don't have to do that in our workbench. Instead, it will be generated through our plugin. So after that, we just go down into our 2 sections. We have one the save player, and we have one load player. And let's move on to the save player. And in the save player, we make 4 new variables. It's int hair color, int body, and int body color. And we get that from the reader, and we read an int from there. So just when we in Unity, we have to make sure we send not only the UMA data, race, gender, and player name and stuff like that. We also send the hair, body, and body color. And then we have to go into the execute query, insert into table player, and there we have to going for the hair color, body color, and body also. And as the values, of course, the add hair color, add body, and add body color. And down here in the query parameters, you going to have the hair as in hair and the hair color as the hair color, body, and so on. So just set these values into the queries here. So when we call that function, it will be added into the database. And the next one is, of course, the load player. In the load player, we don't have to change the execute query. We just have the select star from table player where ID is at user ID. So we don't have to change there anything because we have that already. We have here star. So we just go into the Darkrift writer and go here and say we send these extra 4 values as we have them in row 0, hair color, body, and body color, which are the columns of our database. And then we have here the writer, so it will be sent to Unity. So nothing's changed there. You just build the project and put that into your server and start the server, and your server side should be finished and workable with the new stuff. Okay, the next is, let me close that, and we don't need that any longer. So the next is, before we start the new script, we have to manipulate a couple things. And for that, let's open up our Visual Studio. And first of all, we have to change stuff in our item, or we have to going to add 3 more things we store in an item. That's the UMA slot number, the UMA slot name, and the UMA overlay name. So we know which one we have there. And for them to be manipulated in the item editor, you have to open your item editor script, and let's scroll somewhere where it is. Here it is, and you have to add these things. So you get in our item script, in our item editor script, the right values, and you can manipulate them over that editor script. So it's just item, let's scroll there, item database.item index UMA slot number, and there we're going to have the UMA slot out of the editor GUI layout, and we have an enum pop-up, and we call that UMA slot type, and we get the value out of the value which is there in a moment. So, and then we're going to have the UMA, the GUI layout with the width we defined up there. And that you have to do for the 2 text fields also, and I call them UMA slot and UMA overlay, and you just have a string there. So when you create an item, you have to fill that up. Let's go into one of these items. So we open item editor, and we see here, let's go to the end, we have the title, the description, and we got the item model and the item leg as an item type, and we have the UMA slot, which is legs, and we have the UMA slot name and the UMA overlay name. So we have these 3 extra things in our item database, so we know which slot and which overlay is, or we have to add in or to our UMA. So that's that. And the next thing is we had a plugin. So let's close the item and close the item editor. Yeah, and we have here in our stats, we store our Intel, Wisdom, Dex, and so on, and also we store the hair color, body, and body color there also. So these things we have in our database, we store them when we load the character. We store these extra values in our UMAStat class. So for that we have to add them here in the function for building up the stats. Also, so you have to have hair, it's equal to underscore hair, which you just add here as a new values. And of course, if we create an empty, so it's just stats, you have to set them to 0, 0, 0, 0. So that's for the stats. So now we know where we store that. And after that, we need to change the inventory position. And in the inventory position, we stored the X and Y and the item type and the slot icon. But now we also want to store the UMA slot number in there. So let's open up one of these things, the positions, and you see here we have the UMA slot, and we just have all slots we know or we created in our helper class. So that's that. Or when you manipulate them, you have to make sure, for example, the slot item for the armor or the armor element has to be on the torso, and the hands to the hands, and the legs to the legs, and so we know where we store these things. So that's for the position database. And yeah, we close that. The next is we have, or we used the simple event messenger system that came from the Unity tutorials, and we have a problem on this simple one because it doesn't support values. So if we have a Unity event with we want to have a value to give to the event, it's not or we can't do that. So we have to expand that also, and for that we override the Unity event or make a new Unity event with one object, and I call it just my object event. And it depends on Unity event with one object. Then we have the private dictionary, string, and my object event. So we store these things here. When you or when we create a new event, it will be added to the dictionary. And since we don't want to make new dictionaries for every, so when we have a string here and an int and a float or whatever we want to submit there, we use an object here, so we can put in whatever we want. You just have to make sure, we come to that later on, to make sure that you change the object type here in the function you call to the thing you put it in there. So I show you that later on. Then we have to go to the init, and we create a new dictionary. So we say event object dictionary is a new dictionary with string and my object events. So just initialize that, and then that's old. Then we have to have a start listening. So we override that with a Unity action object, and we go here and say we have a my object event, and this event is a 0, and then you just fill out that as it was before. As always, if you want to know more, just go and see the tutorial from Adam Bruckner. And we say this event is a new my event object. And then we have a listener, and we say that this event is added to the dictionary. Then we also have a stop listener, so we remove the listener from our dictionary, and always also the same as here. You put in not unity action, you put in unity action one object. And the same is with the trigger event. We just say we have the string event name and the object we want to put in the event, and then just invoke the object, and that's all. So we just copy the trigger event, the stop listener, and the start listener, and put in the new unity action with one object in there, so we are safe there. So that's just easy. Let me close that and close that, so you see the new stuff. So here's the start listener, here's the stop listener, and here's the trigger event for the new unity action. So that is closed then also. The next we have the UMA builder, and in the UMA builder let's start with the player manager. Let's go to the player manager and just make sure our items or our character will be transmitted to the plugin we worked on before. So we're going to say the save player, and in the save player we say we have also an int of hair, an int of hair color, an int of body, and an int of body color. And then we're going to have a writer, and after the UMA data we write the hair color, the body, and the body color. So that will be transmitted to our plugin. Always make sure these values are the same order than you have in a plugin. If you have in a plugin the hair color at first, you have to do that here also. And if you have more than these four values, for example, the beard color and the beard and whatever you want to add there, you have to add that here also. And yeah, by the way, while we're on it, I disabled this function. We don't need that. You remember we had one with one value more. We don't need that, so we just go in there and document that out. So that's load. Yeah, here's the onData event for the load. So if we get a packet back from the server, we have the received data, and in the received data we have here our new values. And since we manipulate the stats, we just have to add here the mystats.hair, mystats.hair color, body, and body color. Also here, remember the order you sent them from the plugin. So that's the same order here. Good. And then we go for we send and receive that. Then we go for the UMA builder, and in the UMA builder we gonna use this function save my player, and in save my player we of course have to add these four values. So we have the hair number, the hair color number, the body number, and the skin color number. That's the values from our sliders. So when we move the sliders, the numbers will change here, and when they change here, we save them to the database. So that's for the UMA builder, and that's for the player manager. So in our player script, we just reconfigure the save my player, and in the save my player we just add the player stats for the hair color, player stats.body, player stats.body color, and then we just go and make the UMA like normal. We did everything normal, and then we just create a new event in our event manager. We say here at the character ready callback. So when everything is ready and our character is built and we have the expression and we have the twist and we have the capsule collider and we have the controller, we just on the end we'd say the event manager dot trigger event, and we implement new event, and the event is player ready. So if the player is ready, we can do something, and so we have an sure status when the player is ready and everything is ready to roll. So let's close the player and move on to the slot. And the slot is maybe that where we want to start and picking up the things, and where we want to speed up things, that's where we have the spawn item. So if we have the spawn item, we do everything, and the stuff is in the slots and stuff like that, and then we look on our slot if the slot is a fixed slot. And if it's a fixed slot, we're going to see the inventory position .item .slot ID, and there we look for the base UMA slot number. So if the slot number is not 0, we just want to go forward. If it's 0, we are not interested in this at all. We just want to make sure if we have an UMA slot number, then we want to do something. So, and what we want to do is we just create a new event, and that's the event manager.trigger event, and that's an add UMA item event. That's how I called it. And what do I put in the event is the iDrag.item ID. So we know which item we dragged on our slot or is in our slot. So we want to send the item ID in there, and that's the item ID out of our item database. So there is where we added the slot overlay slot, the UMA slot, the UMA overlay, and the UMA position in there, or the UMA base slot number. So, and then since we checked here if the item ID is not equal to 0, or is equal to 0, we know that this only happens if there is an item in our item database. But if there's no item in our item database, we want to check if it's a fixed slot. And if it's a fixed slot, we of course have to set the background picture we did before, but also we have to check if the base UMA slot number is not equal to 0. And if it's not equal to 0, we're going to have the event manager trigger event add UMA base item event. So that's the stuff we stored while we created our character in the UMA builder script. So we have there a list, and if in the list we gonna check or we send the event there. And what we're going to do there, we want to send the UMA base slot number. So we want to send, for example, if we are on the legs or the trousers and or on the torso, we want to send these UMA slot number into this event. And that's all we need to have here. We just don't have to do anything else because we only want to manipulate the UMA character when we put in an item into the slot or we put an item out of our slot. So as the next, we create a new script, and I have it here under player, and I called it add UMA item. And in the add UMA item, we use the Unity engine, the yazoo.itemSystem, the yazoo.player, and of course the using name, the UMA namespace. And we have it as a mono behavior. And so we can add that to an game object. Then we have the public item database. So we just fill that in the editor with the item database, and we have the race list. And the race list is where we store everything for our characters. Then we have a private UMA data. And then we have a slot library, an overlay library, and we have the stats. And we have then a string for what was RG. Let's see what was RG. That was the race gender. Yeah, race gender, and we have an integer for the race. Where is it? Race list number. So you remember in our race list we have different lists in there. We have one for female, we have one for male, we have one for alp and stuff like that. So we want to find out which number we have in there. So then we want to have on enable. We want to add ourselves to the events add UMA item event. That's the event we created, and we expect that to call the add UMA item function. Then we have a start listener for add UMA base item event, and it calls the function add UMA base item. And we have the start listener for player ready, and it calls the function player ready. Of course, when we disable this, we just get rid of the listener just to clean everything up. So the first is we going for the player ready. And if the player is ready, we just going for the myUMA data, and we just go and find the player game object and get the component UMA data. And also we just get the slot library and the overlay library. So we going to find a game object slot library and get the component slot library. And we get to find an overlay library game object and get the component overlay library. Just basic and nothing special. And then we're going to have the player and going to find the get component player, and there we going to set these values. So the player stats and the race gender. Then we have to look through our database, the race list count, which is the length of the race list. And then we look for a name is equal to the race gender we generated here. So there's one thing I just noticed. In our, let's go to our race list. In our race list, we have a name here. We used that name in our UMA builder for picking up the right UMA base, but we can't have that here for an ELP. It should be human male here. So we may have to implement a new name here for going through the right thing. That I maybe implement later on, and you can see that for just now we think we have just these both and nothing more, and that should work fine. So, and now we know we have the player stats in our variable, and we know the race gender, so we know it's human male or human female, and we have the right number of our race list. So then we go and well, let's go here for the add UMA item event, and it's called the add UMA item. And the add UMA item has an object with the my number. And now it comes where we have to define the object. So we're just going for a new int. My number is equal to int my number. So we tell Unity that the object my number is an integer, and we get that to a new variable. So always, if you call these function or this event add UMA item event, you always have to make sure that your object here is in int. As I told before, why we're doing this in object and just don't do this as an int. It could be that you have an event with a string as an value. So then you have to make an extra event just for strings. So with an object, we just don't care what it is, and we just make sure in the event, the first line we get or tell Unity that this object is an int, and so we have it in a new variable. And then we're going to use a function set UMA item, and we set my number and the color. So that gives us that we have to add color. We may have to store that in our item database also, or in our item list. Maybe in our item list. So one item could be one color yellow at one player, and one other player has it in green or gray or whatever. But we have to read that somewhere and fill that in here. And then we have to tell UMA that UMA is dirty, and therefore we have a function UMA is dirty. So let's go for the set UMA item. And in the set UMA item, it's just easy. We have the int here and the color, and we look in our item database item at the ID we send in here. What is the UMA slot name? And if it's not empty, we're going to slot add the item at the UMA slot number we have in the item. So we say it's an integer, itemdb.item at the position ID dot UMA slot number. Why we have to add an int here? Because it's an enum and it would not be recognized as int. And then we have to say the itemdb.item at the position ID, the slot name, and the slot library. So we just create that, and for that to work, I just copied here down here every creating function we used in the UMA builder script. So just copy them from the UMA builder script, so you have that here on the list. Make sure this name is the name we use here. So I don't know if you named your UMA data in your UMA builder script different, like UMA data whatever. You have to change that here to my UMA data, or change the value, the name of the variable to what you used here. And then we check if the item database.item at the position ID or UMA overlay name. So if we have an overlay, then we just add the overlay, add the slot number with the overlay name, with my color, and out of the overlay library. So, and then I see we got an error here because we set the UMA here and have UMA is dirty here. So we just only need that one time. So we're going to use that behind that and say UMA is dirty. And in UMA is dirty, we just say is mesh dirty, is atlas dirty, is shape dirty, is texture dirty. And then we call the function UMA data dot dirty. So if anything happens here, we just say it's not right, and we clean that up here. So our UMA will be regenerated. So we go a little bit up there. So then last function, add base UMA item event. So if we drag an item out of the slot, we want to make sure that our base list is back there. And for that, we say our object ID is an int again. So we say int underscore ID is equal to int ID. So the object is an int. So after that, we go for a for loop and look in our arrays list if we have an UMA slot which is equal to the ID. And if we find them, we add the slot. So we just say add slot at the ID from our arrays list at the arrays list number slot list dot list I dot slot and put it out of the slot library. So after that, we have a new slot, and after the slot, we need a new overlay. And so we go for the next loop, and we look in our body list at the race list number, and going for the list and going for the body there, and check for the UMA parts or for the length of the UMA parts we have stored in there, and then we scroll through that and go and look for the body list UMA parts if there's somewhere an UMA slot that is equal to the ID. And for that, you make sure that the int here is or the enum we have here is changed to an int, and then you can compare them. And if that's the case, you just add the overlay with the same than we did before. So you go for the ID and then you have the race list dot race list number body list dot list, then the number of the body we have stored in our stats. Then you go for the UMA parts and the overlay name, and then you go for the race list dot race then you go for the race list dot list race list number, the skin color list, and then you go for the body color we have stored in there and grab the color, and of course the overlay library you want to pull the item off. So that's all. Of course, you have to set the UMA as dirty again, so everything will be rebuilt. That's all for the scripts in the moment. As I told, we're still missing these raceless thing. We have to change that in a later video, but that's for the script. And when we finish that, we come to the setup, and the setup is just easy. You go into your start scene. Let me open that. 1, 2, 3. What's slow today? There it is. And we have our player. And if on the player we add the UMA item script we just generated, and we put in there our item database and our race list. And then, of course, you have to create an item. Let's go here. Go to my last thing. So I created the Wanderer armor, which is on the UMA package now. and added this on the legs, and I added the slot and the overlay name, and of course I added the jacket, which is on the torso slot, and the Wanderer torso slot, and the Wanderer torso overlay. What we have to add there is if it's a female or male item, so we have to decide if we can put it on our fixed slot or not, while we are a male or female, because the things are different. So you have a Wanderer jacket male and a Wanderer jacket female. So you could go and start the script now, or the game now, and it should work. I show you again one item I made. It's in world on my part items, and let's go for the pants. And this is the pant I generated. So it's the mesh renderer, the mesh filter with the mesh, then the rigid body for it to fall down. Then we have the pickup item script. So if I put it into the world, I can pick it up. For the pickup item to work, you have to make sure the item tag is an item. And then we have a mesh collider. So the rigid body is working then. And of course, we have to have the material. So the right material. And that I did for the pants and the jacket also. The jacket is the same. We have the material, mesh collider, pickup item, rigid body, the mesh itself, the mesh renderer, and it's the tag is item. And so you always have to build at least one item and drag that into a prefab, so you can replace it everywhere. Yeah, well, I hope you liked the video. If you do, just hit the like button as always, and if you liked it even more, I would be more than happy to see you subscribe to the channel. Thanks for tuning in and having fun. Until the next video, see you soon. Bye bye.